Urban Explorer of Reddit. What was your GTFO story? I was exploring an abandoned mine shaft for the second day in a row. This was in a small, old Midwestern town that used to be booming from the mining industry, but has long been abandoned. It was also a 10-minute walk from the nearest road. This time I went with different friends and better flashlights. The door I had gone through the first day was now padlocked shut. That should have been the first red flag. But we found an entrance from the rooftop into one of the main buildings and continued to explore anyway. After exploring about 3 floors of mine shaft below ground, we were back on the main floor exploring the workshop/garage, and I was looking through the cracks of light coming through the rusted metal walls when I noticed a bright color that stood out from the rest of the area. It was a man looking back at me through the cracks. I was seeing his blue sweater. I could see 2 sets of eyes looking into the room that we were in. After whispering to my friends that there were people watching us through the wall, we effing booked it out of there and jumped off the roof and into the woods. The men were in a pickup truck and drove around looking for us. Even getting out of the truck to look around, we couldn't see them from where we took cover, but we could hear the truck stop, the doors open, and footsteps breaking leaves and twigs only 20 feet away from us. We hid there for about 15 minutes while the men searched all around for us. It is harder than most people think to try and quiet your breathing after sprinting. It was terrifying. I'm not going back there. Edit. A few words and typos. Thanks for the internet points, dudes. As a teen I used to break into an old aluminum factory a lot. Led who was with me at the time up a staircase winding around pill-shaped vats with small flap lids. 4 flights up we start seeing feathers. Then a dead bird. Then a pile of dead birds with no open ceiling where they cold flown in. We turn around and he stops me. Says he saw some dust fall and we notice the lid on the vat next to us is open. There were no noises aside from us, which was somehow comforting. Still never went back after that. I was exploring an old stormwater filtration plant once. The lower levels of the main buildings were all flooded, which was super creepy, and it was pretty overgrown. This was my second time there, and I wanted to see more than I had last time. A friend of mine and I had a bright idea to climb into one of the pipes that had an open manhole cover, really stupid for a whole bunch of reasons. We figured we had a pretty good guess where it would come out, as there was another manhole on the other side of the compound in line with where the pipe was heading. When we got all the way there though, it turned out to be welded shut. The worst bit was when we turned to go back, we realized we'd been slowly going downhill. The pipe was fairly slimy and it seemed for a minute like we wouldn't be able to go back the way we'd come. I've never quite felt that level of claustrophobia before or since. Edit. As others are rightly saying, never do this. I realized shortly after how dangerous it was. Thanks for the safety tips and up points, friends. Not terribly urban. Back when I lived in the rural south, but my friend and I went to an abandoned trailer because she wanted to show me all the old Playboys that were left lying around in it. There were pentagrams painted on the front door and on one wall of the bedroom that was through the kitchen, but that wasn't too spooky. My brother was one of those edgy teenagers, and I had seen more than enough crookedly spray painted pentagrams to know it was just idiots goofing off. Now, the scary part was the half-dead cat hung by its back legs from the ceiling fan in the back room down the hall. We went to take it down so we could call the cops and then hopefully get to bury it at her house and give it some peace. And then it woke up and started squalling. It scratched me on my arms and her on the face and tried to get away, but it was so weak all it could do was stagger. We eventually got it wrapped in my shirt and walked home to explain to her mom where we were and how it happened. That crotchety old cat lived like another 6 years with no teeth, dislocated back legs, fixed by the vet of course, but the cat still limped forever, and horrible cataracts. Edit. I posted a picture of her on my page if you'd like to see. Was exploring an abandoned TB hospital. Heard a sound that sounded a lot like a homeless person snoring. It took a while for my friends and I to work up the courage to go in the room where we heard it, but we were rewarded with the sight of a vulture's nest. When me and my friends were young, we lived in a trailer park community in a bad part of Phoenix, but we loved exploring anyway. We found a large old storm drain behind our community covered in graffiti and weeds, and we decided to explore. Walking in with mini flashlights, we kept seeing spots of blood and more strange graffiti. After about 30-ish minutes we started hearing tapping. We got scared and started to walk back out. When we noticed it seemed to be following us, we ran like our lives depended on it. A few weeks after that, our community manager discovered a body near the entrance of the storm drain. That was the last of our exploring. I was taking a look at some of those massive smokestacks in an abandoned factory, and I heard a radio squelch. That's time to go. Right there. I convinced a group of about 5 or so of my friends to go with me into this old house that was in an odd sort of industrial area, like on one of those service roads next to a highway. The only way in was to go through the basement and through a hole in the wall at the top of the stairs. After exploring for a while, I thought I'd do a scout mission for fun. That involved me just walking around the house to check for cops. Well, what do you know? There were cop cars just pulling into the street with sirens on that were pulling into the restaurant next door. Someone probably reported us. The exit was on the other side of the house from the cops. I quickly called up to the others to climb back out, and we somehow managed. I don't generally believe in intuition, but I do find it odd that I had the urge to do a sweep right when the cops showed up. No really scary ones other than random bums yelling and stuff. But there were a couple of good encounters. One, messing around in the outskirts of a train yard taking pics of old train cars and stuff. Ran into, I guess, a mechanic or maintenance worker or something who ended up being super cool and started up and pulled a locomotive out of the shed for us! 2. In an old, abandoned mining site somewhere, I came around the side of a big machine thing and ran into a homeless dude living in a tent. He also turned out to be cool. We gave him some of our food and sat around for a while talking. In a building I found the basement, then the sub-basement. It was dark. Heard a sound, then an animal running sound, and dogs barking. I booked it back up the stairs and closed the fire door and GTFO. Speaking to some urbex mentors, they explained, if you hear dogs or see them, to not go in the area as it's probably used for a drug lab. Spooky cement tunnel that seems to lead underground. Very dark and echoes go on for ages. We had no clue what it was. Didn't seem to be any kind of drainage tunnel because it was square/bone dry and out in an open field. There are definitely some old bomb shelters and missile silos on our area that are out of commission. So we decided to take a look. Only about 20 yards in, and the light from outside starts really fading behind us. Someone takes out a flashlight, and we start seeing bare human footprints on the ground leading deeper into the dark. None leaving. We skedaddled. Came upon an active shooting gallery in a tunnel one time. I noped TF out of there in a hurry. Went exploring in an old textile mill in rural Alabama. It was easy enough to hide your car for parking, and you could even pull your car onto the site if you had 4-wheel drive. We went often, and one time parked right in the middle of the mill's backlot and decided to climb the ladders to the roof. Once we got to the roof, the sun started setting, so we got our headlamps ready, watched the sunset, then decided to head back down from the roof. As we are walking to the ladder, my car alarm down below starts going off, and immediately from the rooftop across from us someone flashed a flashlight at us, but they never said a thing. I was way too nervous about my car being stolen to really care about the other person, but they didn't chase us, yell, nothing. They just kept their light on us so that we could never see them, and followed us with their light till we got into the car and left. I never went back after that. It's torn down now. There was this massive salt storage facility that had a mountain of salt that a private company owned on a rather derelict property next to the city bay. I'm guessing the company sold salt to the city and other municipalities for road maintenance during the winter. My friends and I, all about 12 at the time, as kids do at that age, thought it would be cool to sneak in and climb to the top of this major salt mountain. This salt mountain was about 200 feet high. It was massive. We get to the top and celebrated, rewarded with the most gorgeous view of the city skyline and its buildings lit up across the bay as the afternoon had turned to dusk. As we are getting ready to come down off the mountain, There were about 5 guard dogs, I believe Dobermans, who were at the bottom of the salt mound staring up at us with a piercing glare. They couldn't get up the mountain because they couldn't get traction on the salt, and it probably hurt their paws. We all started freaking out. My friend's little brother began crying. We began yelling for help, but nobody was around. It was late on a cold Sunday afternoon in November. The skies hue darkened as dusk turned to dark. We were probably up there for 2 hours trying to figure out what to do. We finally got silent, laid flat, and acted like we disappeared. The dogs must have gotten bored or distracted and began wandering away. We kept looking and looking, and when they didn't come back for 20 minutes, we traversed off of the salt mound as fast as we could and made a mad dash for the fence in which we entered, and luckily all got out safely. Our parents were all pissed, ready to call the cops because none of us came home at dark. It was one of the most scariest moments of my childhood. Less backquote urban, but sharing anyway. I was camping in BC with my GF at the time and her dog. Had a couple of rough looking people who were the only other people in the area we were camping, but it was late, so we set up and thought nothing of it. Guy wanders over while we are in our tent, can hear him outside, and dog is barking at this point. I get out and ask what he's doing, and he says he just wanted to pet the dog. This is at like midnight. Told him we were settling in etc. Guy wanders off without replying at all to what I'd said. Woke up the next morning to what looked to me like a single 9mm bullet sitting upright on our side's picnic table, and a happy face made with sticks and rocks on the bench part of the table below it. Maybe it was just a shitty joke, but we sure as F didn't stay around to find out. I was exploring when I noticed some dude trailing me. I was saved by a bus driver who noticed me and opened the door as he passed by me. I spent a lot of years super into urban exploration hoping something would make me nope out. It happened a lot, and it was always the same thing. The cops. There was an abandoned house down the road from my high school that was still filled with stuff. Some friends and I would hang out in there from time to time. There was a point where the house got boarded up, and we didn't go into it for a while. Jump to a few months later, and one of my friends told me he found a way inside. After a couple more weeks I went to the house with one friend to check it out again and relive some memories. When we got there, it was clear something bad had taken place. The stuff in the house was thrown all over the place. Any kind of dish from the kitchen was smashed on the floor. When we looked at the stairs to the second floor, we both got the worst feeling. Like we would find something terrible if we went up there. So we got the hell out of there. After a couple more months, the house was demolished. I did lots in the UK a few years back. Denby Asylum in general just made me nope the F out. That place was scary. Not urban, but in Virginia, when I first started to hike, me and my buddy went hiking and walked too far and ended up off trail and walked for a while thinking it's the long way back. The map showed it did loop. Ended thinking let's ask someone, and saw a shack off the trail. As we got closer, saw a Nazi flag from outside the window. Given I'm brown and my buddy was Asian, we figured new exploring lesson, always bring a white guy /s. My friends and I explored an abandoned grain factory in Johnson City, TN. It's been torn down now, but it was massive. Stories upon stories. It was like 11 PM and pitch black in there, and we had crappy little flashlights. We were getting this horrible smell, like death, but kept exploring like dumbasses. We went all the way to the top floor and discovered it was a currently empty heroin den, complete with spoons and shit. Definitely scrammed at that point. Sort of urban exploring, I guess. When I was at Chicago, they were renovating some of the Green Line stations, and a friend and I would jump the turnstiles at the station across from our building at night to get high and watch the trains. Day 2 of the station being closed, and one of the conductors saw us and actually stopped, so we got on with only one other person in the car, thinking it'd be fun to just ride it until it came back. It's pretty late, and after a few minutes we realize the homeless looking guy sitting at the other end of the car isn't actually masturbating. He's cleaning a gun. Got off only to realize it was an Ashland/63rd bound train, and had no idea where TF we were. To this day neither of us remember how we made it home. Only now writing this do I realize we had no way of getting back, since they wouldn't have stopped at our station again. When I was a teenager, some friends and I would occasionally party in the disused biology department of the local university. Would get in through a hole one of us cut in this barbed wire fence surrounding the building. Maybe the 4th or 5th time hanging out there, a few of us are exploring and find a lab that's still got like beakers and vials in it. And there's this biggest walk-in freezer type door in the back with plastic tape over it. Sort of like crime scene tape. Being the young imbeciles we were, we tore the tape off and opened the door. It was definitely some kind of storage area, with shelves full of jars of weird liquids and powders, and the ground was covered in broken glass from a jar that had fallen and shattered, releasing this red powdery substance that was coating everything. We realized it probably was hazardous to our health. Went back to the main group and we all left and never went back. I still have no idea what the stuff was. It could have been harmless. But I'm also glad we were sober enough not to try tasting it or something stupid like that.